So, how did you get here today? Did you come on your own, or did you come with someone else? Did you walk, or did you drive? When you think about how you got here today, you might have looked at street signs or checked your sat-nav, or you might know the area really well, so you got here easily. For most of us, our world is largely defined by what we see. We rely on our eyes to give us vital information: street signs, maps, sat-navs. And when you go home tonight, you'll see the faces of your loved ones, and all of those visual images will frame your world. But for me, no such luck. Why? Well, I simply don't see what you see. I can't navigate my world in pictures. I can't even go home tonight and see the faces of my loved ones. Well, I can, but the difference is I might not recognize them because I'm face blind. I have a condition called Prosopagnosia, or face blindness. And that means I often ignore friends and family and people I was just speaking to a few minutes ago, and they all think I'm a stuck-up cow. Well, of course I am. But actually, right now, you could be sitting next to someone who also struggles to recognize faces, even faces of people that they know really well. And that's because 1 in 50 of us has some form of prosopagnosia. Now, the form that I've got means that I can recognize myself in the mirror, but I can't always recognize myself in a photograph because it's the wrong way round. I recognize my family, most of them, and some of my friends some of the time. But if I'm out and about and I'm not expecting to see someone I know, they can walk right past me and I don't see them at all. When I'm with someone, I know who they are when we're together, but if they leave the room and then come back in, I may not know it's them. And if they change their appearance in any way, like putting their hair up, wearing glasses, or sometimes if they even turn their face sideways onto me like this, my brain screams, "Stranger!" even though it's obvious it must be the same person. Now, face blindness, or prosopagnosia, is on a spectrum. At one end, you don't recognize anyone at all, and at the other end, it's tricky, but you can get most people. So this is me trying to identify you. Are you ready? I have to stare at you just long enough to make you feel really uncomfortable, like I'm being very rude, or I've simply gone insane. So do you want to know what it might feel like to be face blind? Okay, I'm going to show you. It's really easy. All you have to do is to hang yourself upside down like this. Let me explain. The brain is processed to recognize faces the right way up. So when we're presented with a face that's the wrong way round, that's upside down, we struggle to process it properly. And in fact, we may find it difficult to identify. So here are some upside-down faces for you. Now, I've chosen some really famous faces, so you should be able to work out who they are. But it takes your brain a bit longer, doesn't it? Right, let's see them the right way up. Okay, well, I can recognize Beyonce. But as for the others, duh, face blind. So for me, looking at faces every single day is a bit like you seeing a face upside down. I know it's a face. I can see everything that you see, but it just doesn't mean anything to me at all. All around me, instead of me seeing faces that I recognize, all around me are beautiful strangers. Now, I've even run workshops where I've insisted that someone leave because I thought they were a gatecrasher, and they've said to me, "Henry, I've been here all morning." But actually, I'm in really good company. Brad Pitt, Duncan Bannatyne, and Stephen Fry, they're all face blind as well. So, what are the best jobs for somebody with prosopagnosia? Hermit. Shepherd. Got it. Celebrity, because acting like a diva and ignoring everybody or calling everyone darling seems completely normal. Well, actually, my job is working very closely with people, and it's the best job in the world once I know who they are. And why is it the best job in the world? Well, in the same way that a blind person has developed their other senses, I've developed my hearing and sensing skills to compensate. Not only do I listen very carefully to voice tones, breathing, and key words, I also read the subtle changes in expression and body language when people's emotions move from one state to the other. And I can also tell when someone's lying. Now, a few years ago, I was asked to sit in on an interview panel, and we interviewed 4 candidates for a CEO role. And I really preferred the more understated, quieter individual, but the rest of the panel wanted the more talkative, sociable chap. And he actually got the job, much to my surprise. I'm going to call him Mike. So then what happened was that I was asked to coach Mike as this new CEO. And from the very first session, I knew something was wrong. My heart started racing, my palms were sweaty, and my gut felt really uncomfortable. So I went to Mike's boss and I said, I can't coach this man. It's like his body's telling me one thing and his words are telling me something else. Did something dreadful happen? And the boss said, I can't possibly tell you. You'll have to ask Mike. So I went back to Mike for a second session and I said, Mike, did something dreadful happen recently? And he said, oh, yeah. And he said it in a really conversational way. Oh, yeah, my wife was really depressed, and she was in and out of hospital. And then she rang me one day at work, and she was threatening to kill herself. And I was so fed up with her, I said, go on, then do it. And she shot herself, then and there, on the telephone. And he told me, just like that, like it was nothing. So how did I know that something was wrong? Well, in the same way that you take on board information, you can respond to it in a different way. For example, let's say somebody tells you something. You just take it at face value. But what you can do is notice the difference between body and words or face and body. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine you know Johnny, and Johnny is a little boy, and he's really active, and he moves around a lot when he's very happy and he's very comfortable. And then you say, Johnny, did you tidy your room? And he says, yes, and stops moving. We know Johnny's lying. So what I do is I calibrate or measure the difference between what is normal and what changes. So I recognize what's normal, comfortable, and happy in a person, and then I can notice any disconnect between body and words or face and body. Now let me tell you about a very different client, Charlie. From the first moment I met Charlie, I had a really positive vibe about him. Now I met Charlie again at another interview panel for another CEO role. And from the first interview, I thought, gosh, he's amazing, we've got to have him. But the rest of the panel were unconvinced. They thought that he was rubbish because he'd left school at 14, he had no qualifications, and he was a barrel boy made good. And I thought he was fantastic. And I fought for him to get a second interview. And he did get the second interview, and he finally got the job. And within 2 years, he turned that company around, added 50 million to the turnover, and doubled the profits. And Charlie's gone on to some really great things. Too often, as human beings, we judge a book by its cover. We see someone who's good-looking, and we think that they must be clever or nice. And we see someone who looks less than perfect as less valuable and less significant. Let me give you an example of why we should not judge a person on the way that they look. In 2016, a media storm was unleashed when Jenny Bevan, the costume designer for the latest Mad Max movie, received her award. Take a look at this picture. What most of the media picked up on, and what most of the world saw, was a bag lady on one side and a film star on the other. What I see are 2 beautiful women. Apparently, what most of the world saw was an Oscar winner who was completely inappropriately dressed. So much of the time, we're bombarded with visual images, and we take so much at face value, but I can't do that. So I have to pay attention to what people say and how they say it, how they walk, how they move, how they hold themselves. So in future, try ignoring the face and whether or not a person is perfectly turned out. And instead, focus your attention on everything else and see if that gives you a different impression of the individual. Take time to calibrate or measure what's happy and normal and comfortable in the individual. And then you'll notice when things change. Then you'll notice any disconnect between body and words or face and body. So, I'm face blind. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Well, we find it incredibly fulfilling when we're able to help other people, don't we? And actually, being face blind has allowed me to do just that. I get real happiness out of being able to raise people's awareness of their own abilities and getting them to raise their awareness of how they relate to other people. And so, on balance, and because I don't know any different, I'm glad I'm face blind. Oh, and by the way, if you've met me before, please come up and say hello, and please say your name. And remember, I'll know if you're lying. Thank you.